Welcome to the Latina Presente podcast, our space to say it out loud. I'm your host, Yvonne Armenta. Thank you for your presence and energy as we share our stories and explore both personal experiences and larger conversations that impact our community. Every episode is an opportunity to come together, to reflect on our past, connect to our present, and share our individual and collective voice to impact our future. Our story today is one of how playing a part on stage can shape our relationship to self and lead us into understanding at what point playing the part no longer serves us. School becoming a sanctuary to explore our creativity, and education our ticket into the systems that thought we'd only ever amount to so much. Family dynamics that are often the root and the seed from where our deepest insecurities come from, but also the water that guides our growth and recreation of self in the world. Where we end up? Community care. Today, we're in conversation with Dr. Yvette Martinez-Vu. She, her, is a first generation disabled and autistic Chicana grad school and productivity certified coach, consultant, speaker, and LinkedIn learning instructor. Let's go. Dr. Yvette and I started our conversation checking in. I was having a very weird day where I slept very little and was way off of my routine, just very disoriented. And she shared that a routine is actually very important to her.
I am very, very routined. And if I do something that slightly shifts my routine, it throws me off. So I'm usually really good about knocking out. Like when it's bedtime, I just immediately go to sleep. I don't have a problem going to sleep. I have a problem staying asleep, but that's another problem. That's another thing. So yesterday I had a speaking engagement and it was for a colloquium with a group of grad students. And because they're working students, it was a later evening event. I usually do my speaking gigs in the morning. So it kind of just like pushed back everything, pushed back dinner, pushed back bedtime. By the time I was trying to go to sleep, I'm like, my ass is wide awake. I was just like, when they say se te despertó el sueño, like just, I'm like, I don't know what, like I just on my phone, like, why am I even on my phone right now? And
Literally,
I'm
that
like,
was me.
I've gotta get ready for tomorrow and my meetings and blah, blah, blah. And my body was just like, nope, your ass is awake, wide awake.
That's exactly how I was feeling. Speaking of, have you always been good and function under a routine, or is this something that you worked up to?
Oh yeah, if anything, I'm a very rigid, overly rigid person, and it's part of the whole autistic thing of struggling with flexibility and craving routine and structure and predictability, and that's tied to safety too. Yeah. So I thrive under routine and structure and makes it challenging because life is not like that, no matter how hard you try. Things come up.
As speakers and just working professionals that operate under the times and systems of our industries, it can be difficult to stay in routine and have clear boundaries. Dr. Yvette has a clear understanding of when she performs best and ensures that her meetings or events don't happen in the morning because she's not a morning person or too late into the evening either. She calls these her internal rules.
I mean, I do have a lot of parameters and boundaries and non negotiables, and I'll talk more about that as we get into other topics and questions. But a couple of things come up. Like I have my own internal rules around like when I perform best or when I work best, when I am at my best. So that can be for me not taking on early morning meetings because I'm not at my best in the mornings and not taking on events or any type of work that requires engagement with others in the late evening. Even with my friends, I am my best around the lunch hour. So when I see my friends, I'm like, "Can we do lunch?" Because if you catch me at dinner, I might be a little grumpy. I might be a little tired. You might think that I'm in a bad mood, but I'm just like not at my peak. So I will try to stick within those hours for my work, for my engagements. When I can't, it really depends on every scenario and how directly it aligns with my work. I will either ask for accommodations. I'll be really blunt and honest about my capacity. And I say, hey, can we push this back an hour? Because I'm not at my best at that hour. And if they are unwilling to compromise, I might or might not do it. And if I do it, then I have to compensate for that in some way. So that might mean giving myself more wiggle room. That might mean being more mindful of my sleep, of my nutrition, just to make sure that I avoid any major issues coming up that day. So there's no perfect approach, but I definitely do my best to manage within my parameters, my rules, um, even and then knowing when to ask for accommodations when I really need it.
Boundaries can be hard. And maybe not because we're unsure of what we need, but because we often operate based on these external rules and systems that require us to show up in a very specific way, not always in alignment with what we need, especially as neurodivergent first gen Latinas. I've always mentioned that sometimes public speaking can feel kind of scary because it feels like it asks us to be more like them and less like us to be good at it. It may feel like these external roles just don't give us space to truly be who we actually are and say out loud what we actually need. Research shows that setting and respecting boundaries in relationships is crucial for fostering healthy, lasting connections by balancing individual needs with mutual respect and closeness. Healthy boundaries prevent burnout, resentment, and conflict while also promoting a sense of safety. But people and systems don't always react well to this. Why? One, unfamiliarity and habit. People may have become accustomed to you being readily available and may not take new limits seriously at first. Feeling threatened. When you set boundaries, you're reclaiming your personal autonomy, which can be perceived as a threat by those who are used to taking advantage or controlling the situation. Maintaining power and control. For individuals who are used to controlling others, boundaries are a direct challenge to that control. They may become angry or use manipulative tactics to get their way. Entitlement. Individuals who feel entitled may believe they should be an exception to your rules and may be angered when they are not. As first gen Latinas, some of us may even be the trailblazers in our families when it comes to setting both personal and professional boundaries.
Going back to my childhood, it was always the opposite. I felt like I was always accommodating others and not myself. And I do recall, I mean, I have like vivid memories of growing up in a very messy, dirty, dysfunctional home and just like craving control. That's just like a very clear image that I have of just like feeling overwhelmed all the time and craving that, whether it's the control over having a tidy environment or a clean environment or even a physically and psychologically safe environment. So no, I mean, that's hasn't been the case. That's not something that I learned until I became a parent, really, to be frank. Mhm.
And how long ago was that?
That was 12 years ago.
Which is pretty it's pretty recent, right? In the longer scheme of things,
Yeah.
and, um, speaking about childhood and this particular experience that you have where you're like, "I craved control, like a tidy space," all of that. During those years before you became a parent, before you were able to dictate how some of that went, was there any other space in your life where you felt like you could get a little bit of that, even if you couldn't in the home?
Yes. Yes. My sanctuary growing up, well, it was like twofold. It was school and academics, and it was theater and performing. Those were my two sanctuaries. And so I did my best to just like perform my best academically and perform my best on stage. And really, I thrived on stage because it was a space where I could show up as my full self. I could channel my very big, deep emotions, and I wasn't told that I was too much, which was the opposite of what was happening in my home. I had I have 5 siblings, and I've got 2 older brothers, 2 younger brothers, and a younger sister, and my older brothers were not very nice. I mean, we're fine now as adults, but as kids, they were not very nice to me, and they would, yeah, tell me things like, "You're too much, you're too dramatic, you're too extra, you're too this, you're too that." And so I internalized that a lot, but in that space on the stage, all of a sudden, all of my faults were a strength, and I love that.
School as a sanctuary growing up. How many of us can relate to what Dr. Yvette is expressing? when whatever was going on at home could be silenced for the 6 hours you were at school. For some of us, it might have been the place where we could learn without being interrupted to change a diaper, or play without making an important phone call to the doctor's office, or even have some time to connect with an adult or teachers in a way other than one requiring you to be, quote, a responsible adult. Or maybe it was a space where some of the insecurities brewed at home could be proven wrong. As a fellow introvert turned theater kid turned public speaker, y'all noticing a trend here, we had to take Dr. Yvette back to her first memory of theater.
Ooh. Oh, I haven't had anybody ask me this and such. I don't think anyone's ever asked me this, at least not recently, not in a long time. Okay, so I started doing theater in 4th grade. My dad was around at the time. He passed away when I was 12, but in 4th grade, I was 9 years old probably at the time. And I was a very quiet, shy kid. I started school in 1st grade. I didn't go to kinder or pre-K. I didn't know a word of English. I was very shy and I was selectively mute. Like I did not want to speak. I did not want to use my words. And I remember some of my classmates didn't know what my voice sounded like because I was so quiet. I did have some really incredible teachers. I'm so grateful, even though I was part of a public school system in Southern California. I'm from the San Fernando Valley. I had some really, really good teachers who advocated for me. And I also had my dad, very complicated figure in my life, but he was very, very passionate about promoting our education and our leadership skills. So he forced me to audition for the school show in 4th grade. Forced. It wasn't an option. I had to. And to my terror, I landed the lead role in this very tiny elementary school play. No big deal. It was Rumpelstiltskin. I don't even remember what the show was about, but I just remember I have some pictures of me just like wearing a dress and landing the lead role. I was terrified. And then I did it and I realized, whoa, that was actually so much fun. In retrospect, I can reflect back on it and recognize how well, I didn't know I was autistic when I was a child. And I didn't know about my needs, but theater's a relatively like autistic friendly space in that you're told what to do and when to do it and how to do it. Like you're told what to say it, how to enunciate it. You have everything blocked out. You know where to step, where not to step. And I love that. I love the predictability and the safety in that. If I just follow this and this and this, it's going to go exactly as we planned. And then it's done. And I get flowers. So that's where it started, really, is just from elementary school. And then I kept it up in middle school. I was part of a drama club. I was an after school club. And it was mostly, I didn't do shows. It was mostly just, we did improv and we did a lot of like theater skits and activities. And then in high school, that was when I started doing like full on plays and landing the lead role. I landed every single lead role from freshman year to senior year, except for the musicals, because my ass cannot sing or dance. I've got two left feet. I was part of the chorus or the choir. I was like in the background. I was not a lead. No, I was not the lead. I can't do that. But one of my favorite roles was landing the lead of Shakespeare's As You Like It. And in that role, you're technically playing two roles. You're playing, oh my gosh,
Syracuse and
Ganymede.
Antipholus?
Oh
Is
no,
that
it was Ganymede and Rosalind. Rosalind and Ganymede.
okay? That's a totally different play. Yeah.
So yeah, Rosalind pretends to be Ganymede and dresses up like a boy, and there's this whole journey. And I love that challenge of playing more than one role. That was so much fun. And the challenge of learning Shakespeare and memorizing it, that was such a big feat. Then when I got through that, I was like, whoa, I can do anything. That was a lot of fun.
And how much of the characters that you played kind of either mirrored you or helped you be more you,
They
if that
were
makes
the
sense?
opposite. They were the opposite of me. That's what was so bizarre. There was one show, I think my mom will never forget this show. I think it was called Latina, the show, and I played the drunkard. I think I was called La Chona or something. I don't know. I might be making up the name, but I was the drunk in the show, and my mom had never seen me like that. Like, just picture me. I'm like little Miss Goody Two Shoes. I'm the elder sister. I'm the one that takes care of everyone. I'm very serious in the home. And then to see me on stage, like loud and boisterous and using all these, profanity and really not giving a damn on stage, letting it all out. Like, I'm sure I don't even know what I was wearing, but it was my mom's just like, "Wow, that was amazing." But it let me go there. It let me fully like tap into experiences and emotions that I hadn't given myself permission to fully experience up to that point.
Dr. Yvette just told us that some of her classmates didn't even know what the sound of her voice was like. And if she didn't want to, that would have been okay, of course. But it was almost like the stage and playing a role allowed her to step into a voice that then let her be heard. And y'all, that's the power of public speaking, too. Theater is almost a gateway towards public speaking, especially for those of us that are not used to being in the spotlight or have maybe thought of ourselves as 100% not wanting to be in it, even when we get an opportunity for it. Theater allows us to be in a regular performance, low stakes setting, and it helps manage stage fright and nervousness, reframing those jitters as excitement. Actors learn to use breath control, enunciation, and vocal dynamics to ensure their message is heard and understood. Theater emphasizes purposeful gestures, movement, and facial expressions to convey meaning and connect with audience. You learn to connect with your audience very deeply. It teaches you how to tell a compelling story. And talk about the preparation part. You learn about how many times you need to repeat the script to internalize it and still sound like you're not reading off of a script. A lot of people say they don't want to sound rehearsed and therefore won't memorize their script. But when we are able to combine voice inflection, our gestures, telling a compelling story, that doesn't matter. You're able to memorize a script and still sound like you. I thought the concept of playing characters that are opposite of you was so interesting. Dr. Yvette's performance helped others see her differently, especially people closest to her. Through the plays she was a part of, she was able to rehearse possibility, practice what felt scary in the real world, and gauge how people reacted. This practicing in a different reality gave her permission.
When I was on stage, it was like entering a different realm, and it was also like rehearsing possibility. And so with every role that I took, I could practice things that maybe felt too big or too scary in the real world and then gauge how people reacted. And that experience of practicing in a different reality gave me permission to then tap into those parts of me in my day-to-day life or with people that I trusted. Because one of the things that I have done so much for most of my life, including to this day, is learning to mask and learning to overcompensate. So masking, just like hiding core parts of myself for fear of judgment, fear of not being accepted, etc. And then overcompensating of like feeling that I have to do I feeling like I have to work twice as hard or more than everybody else around me because otherwise they're going to presume my incompetence. So, for me, it was about testing the waters in safe spaces or with safe people. And the more I've done that over time, the more I've been able to get to know myself better and like really tap into what makes me me. Because for so long, who I was all about other people and pleasing them rather than thinking, wait, hold up, what do I actually like? And what makes me happy? What pleases me too?
You are literally speaking my language and capturing what my philosophy around public speaking really is, in that at the core of it is our practice, like how we show up and how people end up perceiving us. But having a space to practice that, to your point, you're rehearsing possibility, right? Is like, I'm just going to put stuff out there, see how it feels in my body, see how I deliver it, see how it's accepted or not, how it's judged, how it's perceived. And then that gives you evidence to fully just continue to show up in different capacities. So I love everything that you just said. I want to quickly go back to something that you mentioned about your father, because I think that a lot of us who experience being more reserved, it's not something we're going to do voluntarily, right? Getting up there. And I think a lot of us can relate to the experience of there was some external factor that almost forced me to take this step. Why do you think that your dad cared so much about education and about success in this way and about being out there in this way?
I suspect that my dad, on top of struggling with his own mental health issues, he had a chip on his shoulder. And I say this because I actually didn't know until grad school that my dad went to college. I actually always thought that, like my mom, he had either a middle school or high school education. And later on, I was having conversation with my mom, and she told me how at some point he went to college and he studied engineering and he never got to finish. And he was this person, he was always actually performing too, in a way, in that when he stepped outside the door, when he showed up in my school setting, he would wear a suit and a tie. He dyed his hair. He didn't show a single gray hair. He blow dried his hair smooth. He had very curly hair. He blow dried it smooth, like slick back. And he had us practice every single day our public speaking. He would say excellent. And he would say excellent, excellent. And then he would like have us repeat after him so that we were all learning English. And he was trying to like get that accent out of us and out of himself too. And he would tell me, I remember him telling me, Yvette, people like us, we don't get to wear pajamas in public. People like us, we can't wear flip flops at restaurants. You got to show up, looking your best, showing your best. And then when we got home, then all bets were off, You could take off whatever we were wearing, change into whatever we wanted to change into. But out of the home, you gotta show up and you gotta be the best. And failure is not an option. In fact, not even failure is not an option. Anything beneath excellence is not an option. So looking back, I suspect that he put a lot of pressure on us because he put a lot of pressure on himself and because he experienced so much discrimination and he witnessed so much disparity. He had a high level of education, both formal and informal. And also he worked a job as a waiter and he worked in a more affluent area. And he witnessed again, like just major disparity, financial disparity, racial disparities, and so forth. And so I think he was really like reckoning with that. And that's why, even though I say he was a very complicated figure, and I have a lot of mixed thoughts around my relationship with him, and even my relationship with him now, spiritually, I have so much more compassion now because I recognize how deeply layered and nuanced all of it was, and how, yeah, he struggled with a lot, and he also experienced a lot that he didn't want us to experience, especially naming the different forms of discrimination. He was trying to protect us from that.
I had a teacher, her name was Miss Obregon. She was my fourth and fifth grade teacher, and she would line all of us up because she would tell us this. She would say, people are going to judge you specifically based on how you look first, and they won't ever listen to what you have to say.
Would line us up and check our ears.
She was real old school. Like, she grew up in the school system when teachers could still like punish
Mm-hmm.
you. So she would check our ears, make sure that they were clean. She would check the bottom of our nails because she was like, you should always have those done up. Like, you should not look dirty, basically. She's like, because people have this concept of you already being dirty because of where you come from, all these different misconceptions that they have about you. Don't let your physical appearance be one more reason why they judge you. There's valuable lessons in there, and it's likely gotten me into certain spaces, but there's also certain things that I wish to unlearn from that. Can you tell me a little bit about your experience with those different,
Mm-hmm.
if you do feel a push and pull, what that has been like for you, and what things maybe you've preserved and what things you've had to let go of?
What came up for me when you were sharing? Well, first, I'll say that I too was raised by a mom who did a lot of things in a different way. It's like she started her own business. She has her own botanica. My dad always supported her with her business, but it was always her running the business. It was my dad who was at home. It was my dad who checked the ears and did my hair and would get really mad if I showed up after school and I was dirty. And I do think that a lot of these things that we learn around how we present ourselves, how we show up, again, going back to the masking and the overcompensating, these are survival skills. These are coping skills. This is how we're able to get by. And I don't believe in black and white thinking. So I don't believe that it's necessarily a good or a bad thing. I just think we have to be aware of when it gets to a point where it might be harming us or it might be distancing us from ourselves and others. So for me, I can tell in certain spaces, there was one professional experience that I had where they were very explicit about the types of clothes that I could and couldn't wear. And one of the things that I couldn't wear were my beaded earrings. And I remember one of the reasons that they said is because it was a professional studio and they didn't want, the sound of the earrings to impact the quality of the recording, etc. But I felt that tug and that feeling of slight resentment. Like, I can't show up as my full self because I love my beaded earrings. Like, if I'm going to wear a nice top, I at least want to wear my beaded earrings. And so I compromised and brought some hoops. Bigger than what they wanted, but whatever, they let me have them. And so that feeling of like, I don't feel like I'm getting to fully show up as myself, and it might negatively impact how I show up today. So yeah, those my thoughts really are around that, around like how can we be more aware of how we use coping strategies to show up, how they help us, and if they're harming us, what can we do to push back, or what can we do to resist?
Could it be that we learn to play a part until it no longer serves us or nurtures us in the same ways it did before? When we're in survival, those methods might work. But what happens when we can reach some kind of stability? A stability we've never experienced before. We likely then realize that we're operating within systems that were not made for us, and yet we have to find a way to continue thriving within them. How do we do that?
I know that there are so many different ways for us to approach this question, or for someone to pursue their definition of thriving. For me, what has been my guiding light and what has helped to protect me are my values and my non-negotiables. So being clear on what my core values are and where they show up, or maybe where they're being suppressed in certain spaces, that's important. And also being clear about what my non-negotiables are and what I'm unwilling to compromise on, because it's at the core of who I am or what allows me to survive and thrive in spaces. So that's one thing that I definitely encourage others to do all the time is, well, name that, like reflect on it, name it, and then, how can you use your values to help guide you? How can you use your non-negotiables to help to protect you? What are the boundaries that you need to set? for yourself and uphold, for others to honor. And so that's what comes up for me is really um, no no system is perfect. I always say, like, we choose our hard wherever we end up, whatever career or life path we end up on, like, is there going to be some hard parts to it? It reminds me of parenting too, because sometimes new parents will be like, "So how is it now that you have a 12-year-old?" And I'm like, it doesn't get easier. It gets different. And so the same thing, even that navigating career pivots, navigating transitions, career life transitions. There's so many parts about our lives that can be challenging. But I think that when you are clear about what matters most to you, it, it also provides clarity in your decision making. So like strengthening your discernment skills is also a way to navigate systems and to thrive within them too. For me, one of my top values is compassion. And then next after that, social justice. And next after that, it would probably be um, accessibility and integrity and efficacy. Those are some of the ones that come up a lot for me. So, starting with compassion, compassion is at the core of everything that I do. When I think about compassion, I think about how I believe that compassion is the antidote to oppression. And the work that I do, you can go into the nitty gritty of grad school admissions and helping people reach their goals. But really, it's just one of many different ways that a lot of us pursue avenues through which we can reduce harm because we exist in systems that haven't yet been dismantled, that frankly need to be dismantled, but we may not see that in our lifetime. And if we don't, what's the next best thing is reducing harm that we might be reproducing for ourselves or for others, or even recognizing the harm that's being done to us, so like being deeply aware of systemic harm and resisting, pushing back against that. But so for me, like compassion is the antidote, and believing in justice is heart work. That's what some scholars call heart work. It's really about a deep love and care for yourself, for your community, and for others. Yeah.
Dr. Yvette often refers to community rooted systems of care in her work, which refer to a holistic approach to community development and change that prioritizes local knowledge and deeply involves community members in decision making processes. This method emphasizes creating systems from the ground up rather than imposing outside solutions and focuses on building trust based partnerships to address community needs, such as in public health, food access, and early care and education. So, what does that look like in action?
I'm happy to share. I love this question a lot. When I think about community rooted forms of care or community care, I'm reminded that we're not meant to do anything alone. And it also reminds me, as someone who is disabled, so one of, the core parts of me and even my backstory is developing a chronic illness in grad school and then later developing multiple illnesses, and how that was a big reality check for me. So that combined with being late diagnosed autistic is really like owning my identity as a disabled individual and also accepting my need for interdependence rather than independence. And so for me, that's part of the care work. And it's like deeply political and it's also reciprocal. Again, we don't do things alone. And so a lot of the systems that we function under, especially in the US, especially in the world of like capitalism, patriarchy, neoliberalism, we are conditioned to think individualistically. We are conditioned to make ourselves think that we have to push through and do things on our own, that we have to individualize struggle and internalize it, and that we have to overwork and that we have to earn our worth. And care pushes back against it because it can mean, like in my household, literally sharing the chores. Little details like my husband will do laundry and I hate doing laundry. He will do laundry, but he doesn't like touching wet clothes like that. sensory experience of touching wet clothes. So guess what? He'll load the laundry, and if it's non-dry, I pull it out and hang it because I have no problem with touching wet stuff. Or like my son will take out the trashes, but he struggles. Like he really doesn't like opening up the trash bags. So I will open up the trash bags for him, hand them to him, and then he goes and deals with the trash. So it's like little things like that of working with others, like of playing into our strengths, even collaborating. Like I don't do a lot of things alone. I co-authored a book, I co-edited an anthology. I didn't do it alone. Even when you write something on your own, you've got editors, you've got folks who are supporting you. And even a lot of times people ask me this as an entrepreneur who also homeschools, and I have many hats. I'm definitely a multi-passionate in that way. People will always ask me, how do you do it? How do you do it? And I'm like, I don't, because I don't do it all. I have help. I have support. I've got a therapist. I've got a coach. Like I don't put it all on myself. And even at this point, I'm trying to figure out what is the next level in my business where I can actually have, even if it's a small team, actually be able to hire help, because I recognize that, again, we can't do anything alone. And in order for me to care for others, in order for me to keep doing the service work that I love to do, I need to also receive care too. And that reciprocity is what keeps me grounded and what helps to keep me connected. Yeah.
I love the real small examples that actually make a big difference in the everyday. Like I'll cook the chicken, but I do not like touching raw meat. I just can't do it. I can't cut it. Like it actually disgusts me and will make me go vegan. Right? Like
You know
I
what's
actually,
funny? I don't eat meat and I
yeah.
get grossed out too.
Yeah, no, like actually, like every time that I think about what meat actually is before it's cooked, I can't do it.
Yeah.
Long time ago, I used to love tacos de lengua. And my uncle, for one Thanksgiving, because we never really do like the turkey thing, we just were
Hmm.
like, what do you guys want to eat? Okay, we do that. He brought the actual lengua, and I saw his process of having to clean and scrape the white stuff off of it and like it like looking like this. And I was like, mm-hmm. That was a day that I stopped eating lengua, and I have never tried it again. So I love that those examples that you gave, because I think people can relate to that and don't see that as community care. We think of community always as gathering and being in the
Mm.
presence of others all the time. Like I think that sometimes, especially in the online world, sometimes we're like we think of community as let's just gather together all the time. That is what community is. What is your perspective around being an active community member and showing up in moments where you are burdened by someone else's need?
It is inconvenient, and that is part of it. That's the sacrifice, that's the responsibility of being in community with others. The other thing too is, we're talking about community care, is that there's like this pendulum of like self-care and community care. I feel like all of us are on one part of that pendulum. So some folks are really good with the self-care, but not very good at the community care. Some folks are really good at the community care, but not so good at the self-care. So I think about my mom, self-sacrificing mom, very good, always thinking about others, never thinking about herself. Or on the other side of things, the folks that focus solely on them and aren't really thinking about other people. And so for me, when I start to feel not just inconvenienced, but when I start to feel either resentful or completely depleted, that's when I know that I need to amp up my self-care. So yeah, I'm accepting that there will be discomfort, there will be inconvenience. But if it feels too much like I'm depleted or too much like I'm resentful, those are my markers of, okay, I need to amp up my own care. So for me, that's really important. And so even thinking about, we're recording this and it's the fall, and fall for me, favorite time of year, but it's also busiest time of year. And I'm like, oh, when a lot of times for folks, when things amp up for them, their self-care goes down. No, for me, it's the opposite. When things amp up for me, my self-care goes way up, because that's how I protect myself. And that's how I can keep showing up for others, is if I show up for myself too. when I was a grad student, and I would get requests from cohort mates or from other folks, other grad students, to review their writing. They'd be like, "Oh, can you like edit my paper? Or can you take a second glance at this?" And I rarely said no. I had a hard time saying no back then. I didn't really have firm boundaries. I really struggled with disappointing others. So I just, if someone asked me for anything, people loved me because they're like, "Oh, you ask Yvette to do anything, she will do it. Not only will she do it, but she'll do it right then and there." So I'd get a lot of requests like that. "Can you review my stuff? Can you just," and I would find myself not having enough time to work on my own writing, to work on my own papers. And I'd be doing all this work for other people. And I'm like, I don't even have time for my own work. And that made me feel resentful. And looking back, I wish that I had set more boundaries and been like, "You know what? I don't have time this week. I barely have enough time for my own writing. Like, can you ask so and so instead?" Like redirect them somewhere else. That's what that looks like for me. Uh, for me now, as someone who, like, I have more autonomy of my schedule, resentment sometimes shows up when I'm unclear about my boundaries, or when my boundaries get pushed back on and I'm not reinforcing them. So that's usually for me, like, let's say someone is reaching out too much. That's why I had to set a policy around how often you can reach out to me when you work with me. Because if someone is reaching out to me 24/7, that's a separate package. so so I've learned to turn things either into like literal policies within my business or internal rules. And that requires a lot of reflection. For me, it starts with the feeling, and then once I notice that feeling, it's reflecting on like, what can I learn? There's a learning lesson here, and how can I make a change to avoid this or lessen this in the future?
At this point, we had about 10 minutes left in our recording time. Y ya saben, somos Latinas, decimos adios, and we don't leave until an hour later. I promise we're not here for one more hour, but the conversation did take a beautiful direction.
We all have our own gifts to share in the world. And for me, at the core of it, it might be tied to harm reduction in some way, shape, or form. And that might be tied to learning to be more compassionate with myself and with others, and encouraging others to give themselves permission to be more compassionate with themselves. And it just so happens that the way that my life has played out up to this point, it is rooted in educational equity. And so, because of my experience in higher education, because of my work as an educator, I've loved teaching ever since I was a child. I remember when people would ask me, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" What did I say? I said, "An astronaut, a teacher, and a fashion designer." So even back then, I was multifaceted. But I always wanted to be a teacher. And now I get to do that, but just in this different way. So, yeah, educational equity and also sustainable success. Because even for those who don't hire me for anything related to grad school admissions, they're hiring me because they see something in me that they're hoping to learn from, right? So they want to change how they do their work. And yeah, I love that. I love working with folks who are, the at multiple sites of oppression, who are historically excluded in different institutions. It happens to be right now first gen, happens to be BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, POCs, Latina, non-traditional folks, parenting folks, disabled folks, neurodivergent folks. There's like queer folks, so many folks, like something about me and what I share about me resonates with them, and they come to me for that. And another thing I think that I didn't really get to touch on is that my work is also about honoring people's full humanity, and also about encouraging more joy and encouraging more well-being. Because again, like, life is so hard. We're living under really, really hard times. It's also not a surprise. Like, this has been the case. It's just so prominent and in our faces now, especially in the age of social media and seeing things 24/7. That can really, really impact us. I'm a sensitive person. So for me, like, I have to set boundaries around even how often I check the news and social media because it deeply impacts me. But I want to remind people that even amidst all this struggle, we still get to experience joy. Like, I'm thinking about my upbringing. When I was a kid, my mom, her store was in a swap meet. This is something that not a lot of people know about. And so those are some of my memories of like being at the swap meet, helping my mom in her shop, listening to the Selena music or the quebraditas, and like smelling the foods, whether it was like the tacos or the snack foods, and asking my mom for a quarter so I can get those chips, so I can get the little saladitos, so I could like have a spicy lollipop. And that was my childhood. It was like my mom worked so hard, and we lived under working class, and even in some cases in poverty, and yet we experienced so much joy nevertheless. So that's what I'm reminded of right now is, yeah, this work is about more than just educational equity. It's about honoring ourselves and doing the best that we can to take care of ourselves and to experience some joy because we deserve it. We are worthy.
Wasn't that conversation with Dr. Yvette so incredible? I hope that you all also laughed alongside us. I hope that you were able to reflect, maybe connect some of the dots between what she was talking about and your own lived experiences. As you know, ya saben, part of the Latina Presente podcast segments is ending our sessions, or recordings rather, with a speech delivered by our guest. As the co-author of Is Grad School for Me and co-editor of the Chicana Mother Work Anthology, and as the founder of Grad School Femtoring LLC and host of the award-winning Grad School Femtoring podcast, Dr. Yvette helps first-gen BIPOC students and professionals navigate academia and careers with sustainable productivity strategies. Her work focuses on grad admissions, executive functioning, flexible work systems, burnout prevention, and values-aligned success. Dr. Yvette offers coaching, consulting, and speaking engagements on grad school admissions, career development, productivity, and well-being. Sharing her signature speech today, sustainable success, not as a means to extract more work, but to reclaim our time, energy, and purpose from systems not meant for us. Dr. Yvette.
Four years ago, on Dia de las Madres 2021, I found myself living what many would call a successful life. I had a stable career at a top-ranked university, a comfortable salary, a new home by the ocean, two beautiful children, and a title I had worked years to earn. And yet, behind closed doors, I was drowning. My chronic health issues were flaring up. My eldest child was struggling with online distance learning, and I was working late into the night while carrying my infant on a rebozo. I was in such survival mode, living under a false sense of urgency, that I couldn't even finish a cup of coffee in the morning as I rushed from one back-to-back meeting to the next. I remember getting flowers and cards on what was supposed to be a celebratory day, with tears in my eyes thinking, this is not sustainable. Did I work this hard just to keep falling apart? That moment was a turning point. I realized I had been chasing someone else's version of success, one that required constant sacrifice for others and left no space for honoring me, my capacity, my pace, my well-being, my joy. On a day meant to celebrate mothers, I was reminded how often our culture praises gendered labor while ignoring the structures that exploit and undervalue that labor. As mothers, we're told, to rest one day, but were not supported to live and work sustainably for the rest of the year. Later that year, I made a pivot. I quit my job, moved my family, and started my business. More importantly, I started to change not just what I did, but how I did it too. I began to approach my work through self-discovery and self-compassion. And what I realized was that at the root of feeling overwhelmed, resentful, and burnt out was me doing work for others in ways that made me lose sight of myself and what actually works for me. I needed to let go of urgency culture and honor my need for slower mornings. I needed to let go of internalized ableism and honor my body's need for flexible remote work. And I needed to honor my desire to be a fully present mom, to spend a Friday morning at the library with my kids or a Tuesday evening at their swim and dance lessons. So I started Grad School Mentoring LLC to support students and professionals who, like me, needed guidance not just in reaching their goals without burning out, but also in changing their approach to how they work and live sustainably. That's how I met Dr. Paloma Rojas Saunero, a brilliant Latina physician, epidemiologist, and postdoctoral scholar. She came to me carrying the weight of what so many of us know too well. That constant sense of feeling behind, of being trapped in a pace that doesn't let you pause, of doing work but never quite feeling it was enough, of never feeling good enough. Through our work together, she began to see productivity differently. Not as a hamster wheel of endless deadlines, but as a creative process she could own. She told me one of her biggest breakthroughs was taking a family trip without opening her laptop once. For the first time, she could be fully present without guilt. She said, "I am no longer a hamster running in a wheel. I am in control of my life." That is sustainable success. When I imagine my vision for the world, it's one rooted in compassion, care, equity, a world where success is defined not by others, but by our values, our non-negotiables, our identities, and our communities. This vision also reminds me of another client who taught me about the indigenous practice of blanketing, of draping someone as an act of recognition, respect, and protection. I see sustainable success as its own form of metaphorical blanketing, of layering ourselves and our communities with the recognition and support we need to thrive, even within systems that work against us. In a world that often individualizes struggle, sustainable success becomes a form of collective care. Success should not cost you your well-being, your relationships, or your humanity. Sustainable success is possible, and when we choose it, the ripple effect extends across our families, our institutions, and our communities.
Doctora Yvette delivers powerful keynotes, interactive workshops, and strategy-rich trainings that help first-generation BIPOC students and professionals thrive without burnout. Rooted in lived experience and grounded in research and proven strategies, her talks demystify higher education, affirm identity, and provide actionable tools for sustainable success. If you're looking for someone to speak at your next event or host a workshop or seminar, reach out to Doctora Yvette using the link in the description of these show notes. She speaks on grad school admissions, productivity, and well-being, and gives professional development trainings. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Latina Presente podcast, our space to say it out loud. Nos vemos a la próxima.